The older I'm becoming and the more experience I'm gaining, the more I am fascinated by human psychology and human history. Sometimes I observe social trends and I ask myself, are people really thinking about how they're behaving? Are they really being conscious about the choices that they're making? Are they really considering where the decisions are coming from? As I ponder over this question, I realize that there are so many things that people simply accept as the truth without ever questioning them. Many times, what we believe is the truth may be a half-truth, and there are times when what we believe is the truth is simply a big lie that many people have accepted as the truth. When you really consider how traditions and cultures are formed, it's almost like somebody has an opinion, and if they hold on to that opinion and they continue to engage with their own opinion, eventually that becomes a belief. And once something becomes a belief and it's shared amongst people, it then gets accepted by a lot of people at some point, and then that becomes culture. And then once that belief is formed from generation, or it's transferred from generation to generation, it's passed down to the kids and the grandkids, it then becomes tradition. And the risk is that once something is accepted by the masses, people stop questioning it and they simply assume that it must be the truth. If everyone's doing it, then it must be the right thing. But is it really? History shows us that very rarely what masses believe to be the truth is actually the truth. In fact, there are so many examples in history that would indicate that what most people end up doing ends up being the wrong thing. George Bernard Shaw has a wonderful saying, if everyone's thinking the same, it is quite possible that no one is thinking. And if you really start to look at how majority of people behave, you'll find that most people do not apply any independent thinking or critical analysis, and they simply just look at each other and follow each other. This has been proven time and time again. And so the question is, why do we do it? Well, part of the reason is that we perceive security in numbers. Whenever we see a large demographic following a particular practice, we find that there is safety in just following that practice, and we don't really question for ourselves if that is the best way to do things. So in this video, I want to talk about some of the common lies that majority of people have accepted as the truth. And if you may look at this and you may go, well, it's not entirely a lie. And that could be the case. It may not be an entire lie, but it may be a half-truth. Let's talk about some of the ones that I have observed that fascinate me, but I don't believe that some of these things that people believe are based on truth and accuracy. Number one, happiness is everything. These days, it's not uncommon to hear people tell each other, hey, if this makes you happy, you should do it. Hey, it's all about happiness. But is it really? Is happiness the main thing? Should happiness be the main thing? So if I do something that makes me happy, should I prioritize that above everything else? Should that take precedent over the needs of society? Should that take precedent over the needs of my family? Should that take precedent over my responsibilities and obligations? And do we really believe that people apply a level of discernment that will make them understand the difference between happiness and pleasure? I mean, what if drinking alcohol gives me happiness? Does that mean that that's what I should prioritize? What if engaging in partying and going out every night gives me happiness? Should I do it? What about the long-term effects of that? So we really have to be careful about this notion that happiness is everything, because it isn't. Sometimes character is everything. Sometimes morality is everything. Sometimes achievement is everything. So it really depends on the context. And I think when people start to believe that happiness is the ultimate goal in life, they end up taking a lot of shortcuts. They end up making a lot of poor decisions because it's all contextual. Yes, certainly at times it is about our happiness, but it can't all be about happiness all the time. But this is unfortunately one of those big lies that the masses have believed, and without applying any context, they've just applied this blanket context that, look, if it makes me happy, then it's right. It's the right thing to do. Well, the other thing is, when we consider morality and ethics, a lot of the times what may make us happy may not be the moral thing to do, or it may not be the ethical thing to do. What if I am running a business and taking money out of my business bank account and denying others their entitlements makes me happy? Should I do it? What if gambling makes me happy? Should I do it? So we have to apply context to this whole notion that happiness is everything, and therefore it needs to take precedent above everything. The second one that you hear very commonly, and especially I hear it because having been in the money space, when I'm constantly advocating the importance of self-responsibility when it comes to securing one's financial future, I constantly get a lot of people saying money isn't everything and money isn't important. I agree, money isn't everything. But to suggest that money isn't important is a big lie. Well, you really think about the fact that after oxygen, after water, after food, money is one of the most important commodities. And money is also one of the most transferable types of wealth, because when you have money, you can afford good healthcare, good childcare, you can afford good education, you can even have autonomy over your time. So when we start to say money is not important, we are lying to ourselves. We're diminishing the value of a very important commodity that can secure our life, that can give us choices, that can give us independence and dignity. And again, this is one of those things that a lot of people believe to be true. And I suspect that a lot of people say this simply because it makes them feel better about the fact that they don't have it, or they don't have enough of it. Rather than confronting the fact that they don't have enough of it, which may be a consequence of having the wrong mindset or not having a skill set that's in demand, a lot of people would rather suggest that money is not important, because then that way they can feel good about themselves. But just because it makes us feel good about something doesn't mean it's the truth. And this is one of those big lies that I hear everywhere. And I know that this is not true, because over the time that I have been in financial services and giving advice to people on money, what I have found is that a lot of people who don't have enough money are very unhappy and they're suffering. So be careful next time you hear somebody say money isn't important. Just be mindful of the fact that they may be saying it because they're trying to feel better about their poor financial choices. The third big lie that is also become very popular, and you can see its appeal because it makes everybody feel good. And the third lie is that everybody deserves the same. But let's think about it. Does everybody really deserve the same? I mean, if everybody deserves the same, why should anybody make any sacrifices? If at the end of the day, everyone's going to get a trophy for participating, where is the incentive for a person to suffer, to push themselves so that they can achieve more? If everybody deserves the same, why should entrepreneurs take a risk? Think about it. And this notion that everybody deserves the same just because we're all humans, I believe is quite dangerous, and it can bring down the productivity and the performance and the prosperity of an entire nation. Maybe at a spiritual level, we all deserve the same. In fact, not maybe, I'm pretty certain that at a spiritual level, we all deserve the same. However, there is a thing called action. There is a thing called psychology. So if we're psychologically not hardwired to perform, if our actions are not going to be massive, if we're not going to take risks, then I would argue that we don't deserve as much as the person who is prepared to put in more effort and is able to drive high performance and is willing to take more risk. So I believe that this notion that everybody deserves the same is completely false. Again, it's one of those lies that makes people feel better about themselves. But just because something makes us feel better doesn't mean it's the truth. The fourth lie that you hear about is that peace and harmony must be maintained at all cost. But that's just simply not possible. if we agree that there are things in the world that are good and bad, or good and evil, then we have to at times fight for what's right. And the other important thing is, when it comes to influence and relationships, there has been a lot of research that's done which suggests that there is inherently more social value in honest disharmony than there is in dishonest harmony. Dishonest harmony means that we're just going along to get along, we're just making agreements because we want to maintain peace and harmony. We're not really speaking our mind, we're not really pointing out the truth, we're not exposing the lies, simply because maintaining peace and harmony becomes the most paramount thing for a person. My concern with that is that when people start to put peace and harmony above the truth, then unfortunately the truth gets suppressed more and more. And as the truth gets suppressed more and more, people end up living a lie. And eventually, anyone that's living a lie for too long is going to be faced with disappointing circumstances. So this notion that harmony and peace must be maintained at all cost is again one of those things that makes us feel good, but is certainly not based on the truth. The next one is that what we feel is the truth. Now, I'm such big on the fact that, the truth is the truth, and feelings and opinions are not necessarily based on the truth. Have you ever been in a situation where you suspected somebody of doing the wrong thing, and you felt all the feelings that a person would feel when they discover that someone's been doing the wrong thing by them? You felt betrayed, you felt cheated, you felt being taken advantage of, and then eventually you found out that all of the feelings that you were feeling were simply not true, that the person wasn't doing any of those things, and it was simply something that you made up in your head. You see, feelings are quite important, and when we think that everything that we feel is based on the truth, we end up engaging with fear, we end up engaging with suspicion, we end up engaging with guilt and shame. And so many times when we confuse feelings for facts, we end up putting our feelings above the logical truth. This is quite dangerous, because if we're only going to do things that make us feel good, then what's going to happen is so many times we're not going to do things that are necessary. So I think this whole notion that feelings are a gauge or an indicator of the truth is simply false. And I always say to people that you're allowed to have your opinions, you're allowed to feel something, but you're not allowed to package your feelings and your opinions as the truth. Another big lie that people have bought into is that education is academic in nature. So if you look at how we currently define education in the world, is when we see somebody who has done years of schooling and tertiary education by becoming a professional of some kind or acquiring a degree, we automatically assume that that person is educated. We don't even look at the fact that the person may have no self-awareness, they may have no understanding of how the world works, they may have zero understanding of managing their finances, they may not even know who they are from, just from a personal development perspective. They may have zero emotional intelligence, but just because they're academically educated or professionally educated, we will assume that they're educated. This is a big lie. I have come across so many individuals in my lifetime who have advanced when it comes to academic and professional education, but when it comes to life, when it comes to being able to connect with people, when it comes to being able to make an impact, when it comes to being able to take care of the responsibilities of their health or being able to secure their financial future, a lot of those individuals fail miserably. I think it's important for us to realize that education equals academia is simply not the truth. And I think it's time now that we really look at that and start challenging this myth that simply because you have years of tertiary education or professional education, that you're somehow educated in all areas of life. And for me, one of the biggest lies that has been perpetuated now, and a lot of people have bought into this globally, is that there is no God. Now, this is a very controversial topic. People go, well, if there is a God, why doesn't God show himself or herself? These days, a lot of people have bought into the concept of what we call New Age spirituality. They acknowledge that there is some divine intervention or there is some universal intelligence out there. A lot of people will even acknowledge this universal intelligence as the universe. And all of that is fine. But God simply is the acknowledgement that there is a divine intelligence that is holy, places a moral obligation on us, and is personal in nature. You see, we can acknowledge that there is a divine intelligence, and we can call it the universe, but it's largely impersonal. When we don't understand the nature of God, and we deny it simply because we don't understand it, and what happens is we end up believing this big lie. The fact is, if there is no God, and there is no personal God, and there is no moral obligation on human beings, and if science is everything, then if we just apply scientific basis, then human beings are nothing more than a cluster of cells, blood and bones. Where does our consciousness come from? Why do we feel that we need to do the right thing? Why is it that human beings, as social animals, if we're just social animals, why is it that we're able to create such incredible things in the world, from architecture to poetry to music? We have to start to ask ourselves that even if you just look at the human hand and you look at the remarkability of the human hand, no robotics has still been able to match the capability of the human hand. Are we just supposed to expect that we've just evolved from nothing? That the precision that we see even in the cosmos and the universe, where we see that the planets revolve around the sun with such great precision, and the weathers precede, the seasons precede each other, should we just all attribute that to random occurrence? Is it really possible that something with such an intelligent design can evolve out of nothing? I mean, nowhere in the physical world do we see that something intelligent or something creative comes out of nothing. Every time we see any kind of system or organization in nature or in the economic world, we automatically assume that there is an intelligence behind it. So why is it that we assume that, so many of us who don't believe in God, why is it that we assume that this is all of the human life and everything that's happened in the universe and the world is just a consequence of some spontaneous combustion and there is no intelligence behind it? Now, it's up to the individuals, of course, who don't believe in God, for them to really take the time to understand what God is and, you know, what does it mean to actually have faith in God. When we talk about faith in God, for me, faith in God doesn't mean acknowledging the existence of God. But for me, faith means trusting God. And so that's the real distinction. So many people believe that they're spiritual, but they don't really fully understand the nature of God. And then we, of course, as we're starting to see that the more modern the world is getting, we're starting to see that more and more people have made the decision that there is no God, and they have decided to turn their back on God. Now, again, I'm not here to lecture people on believing into God, but think about this. All of us have a God. If you don't believe in a heavenly God, we either believe that the government's God, we believe our parents are gods, we believe our teachers are gods, we believe the media is God, or we believe that we are gods. Everybody has a God. But when we don't really understand the truthful nature of a holy God, we end up living a big lie. Again, it's not in the scope of this video for me to help you understand what it is, but that's for you to identify and explore. But I really strongly believe that this is one of the big lies that the new generations have bought into. And unfortunately, this big lie is going to cause them to unnecessarily go through an enormous amount of suffering. The reason I'm pointing out the lies and, I'm really interested in the pursuit of truth is because I don't believe that any wisdom can be accomplished without the pursuit of truth. So I also have realized that a lot of the truths are brutal and they don't make us feel good because so many of them will contradict our beliefs and so many of them will challenge the way we feel. But regardless, I really strongly believe that the pursuit of truth must take precedent over everything. I also very strongly believe that the more lies a society or a community believes, the more suffering they attract, because as they move away from the truth, they inadvertently also move away from wisdom.